Samantha Bundy, informative speech. So, who here has ever made a stupid decision? Yeah. So there are times when we go through things where we don't know what, like we know what we want, but you struggle with what's right and wrong. So like an example would be like you're at the store and you want to work on your body, you know, you don't want to eat so unhealthy, and you see this wonderful piece of chocolate, and man, like there's a part of you that really, really wants that piece of chocolate. But then there's part of you that says, no, like you need to eat healthy, like let's not. But then there's another part of you too that will come together and come with happy medium. Okay, like maybe we can just buy half a piece of the chocolate. So as humans, we're all inclined to wants and needs. We have the way we satisfy these needs can lead to internal conflict, internal ethical conflict. And Sigmund Freud talks about these, develops this theory called the id, the ego, and the superego to show this conflict that occurs on the inside. So I've struggled with a lot of decisions myself, especially just with moral and ethical decisions. So learning about these three elements of the mind will help you be a better person. So a little bit about Sigmund Freud is that he's an Australian neurologist, and he was born in 1856. He was into psychoanalysis, and he developed psychoanalysis and worked with Joseph Brewer in college. And Joseph Brewer, they had the same ideas about dreams and everything, but his theory started developing a little bit differently, and so they fell apart. But he was into the dreams and the unconsciousness, and he developed the interpretation of dreams, and then created the concept of the id, the ego, and the superego. All right. So the id is, as you already know, there's more than one part to the human psyche, and the human psyche, the first part that developed is the id, and this is with you at birth. These are the primitive instincts that you have and your unconscious desires. They're also your inherited traits. So an example would be like babies. As you're a baby, babies don't care about their parents if they're sleeping, if they're busy, or if they're doing anything. If they're tired, they'll cry. If they need their diaper changed, they're gonna cry. Like they want their attention. They want what they need. The id is not affected by reality. It is just affected by what you want. So it's like you want that now. It runs off the pleasure principle. So whatever it likes, it wants. Whatever it likes, it wants. And then primary process thinking, which is your instincts. In his online article, The Id, the Ego, and the Superego, published in 2008, Salman Leaf states that the id operates on the pleasure principle, the idea that every wishful impulse should be satisfied immediately, regardless of consequences. So here's like the id, the ego, and the superego, and then here is the drawing that Sigmund Freud and Joseph Brewer made. So this will be your superego, your ego, and your id. All right. So the ego develops like as you're like when you're learning from right and wrong. It uses compromise and uses reason to figure out like what you should actually want. So Kendra Cherry uses the reality principle in her article, the structural model of personality, to explain that the ego tries to satisfy the id, but in a better way or with an exception. So sometimes the ego will, so if it knows something is bad and that you shouldn't do it, sometimes it will allow you to do it. Because if you don't allow the id to, like do what it wants sometimes, it will lead to anxiety and tension. And so ego tries to stop you from feeling that anxiety and tension and tries to give you somewhat of what you want. So he also, like Sigmund Freud, related the ego and the id to that of a horse. So the ego's relation to the id might be compared with that of a rider to his horse. The horse supplies the locomotive energy, while the rider has the privilege of deciding on the goal and the guiding of the powerful animal's movement. But only too often there arises between the ego and the id the not precisely ideal situation of the rider being obliged to guide the horse along the path by which itself wants to go. So it's basically saying that the id is very chaotic and that the rider can control it. So that's the ego. It also uses secondary process thinking, which is realistic thinking, and ego uses problem solving to figure out what you want. And then there's the superego. And the superego develops between the ages of 3 and 5, when you start to analyze your parents and other people, and you start to build your own morals and your own ethics. The superego is the like most perfect, like ideal self of you. Like, it's the part of you that tells you what's wrong, what you shouldn't do. You know, it just wants you to try to be as perfect as you can. There are two systems to the superego. There's your conscience, and then there's your ideal self. Your conscience is what automatically tells you what's wrong, like you shouldn't do that, and then your ideal self is what you want yourself to be. If you don't, sometimes the superego, like if you do listen to what your id is saying, the superego will punish you. So if you do something wrong, your superego will make you feel really, really guilty. And then if you do something right, and your superego like notices that, you have a lot of pride in yourself. It follows like it has idealistic standards, not realistic. So, as human beings, we all naturally make mistakes. So how do these all tie together? Ford believes that you're only aware of a small part of your personality, and the rest of you lies in your unconscious. So this is us, what we do all the time, but what we really want, what we really do is like all down here, and we don't actually realize it. He believes that if we keep each pieces of our conscience balanced, we could have a good like personality. If it's imbalanced, like if we use more of our id than our superego, then we could be like over judgmental, or we could be way too corrupt. I believe it's important to know how your mind works, because we all make decisions, we all make stupid mistakes, and I feel like it's better to understand it. That way we know what we're doing. So one thing that everyone has in common is that we all want things in life, and we do certain things to get them. And now that you know why, we can all make better decisions.